"Give me a hug because I'm going to jail." Those were reportedly the last words a Wyoming man said to his mom after he allegedly shot his sister in the head. It's an eerie statement to make given that he could face the rest of his life in prison. We're in Gillette, Wyoming for this story, and believe it or not, this all took place just last week on January 20th. That's when police were called to a local home after a neighbor heard the sound of a gunshot. However, the neighbor wasn't the only person to call 911. Police say 26-year-old Vincent Hackett also called 911, but it wasn't a call for help. It was to admit he was the one behind the shooting. The victim, his 33-year-old half-sister, Haleigh Martinez. When police arrived, they reportedly found Haleigh with a gunshot wound to her head. They rushed her to the hospital where hospital staff found 2 more gunshot wounds. Sadly, she never made it out alive and was pronounced dead within minutes after arriving to the hospital. I mean, brothers and sisters normally have arguments, but not ones that result in a deadly shooting. So what happened? Well, Vincent and Haleigh's mother helped piece that together. According to a report by Cowboy State Daily, their mom was there through the whole thing. She told police she made plans to help clean Haleigh's home earlier that day. They drank together, and Haleigh might have been feeling those drinks, according to detectives. That afternoon, Haleigh's mom invited her to her home where Vincent also lives. And a friend of Haleigh's was also invited because she reportedly had Haleigh's children from a sleepover last Sunday. Now, Haleigh's mom told police Haleigh and Vincent might not have had the best relationship, and their interactions were often confrontational because Haleigh allegedly was known to use drugs, and Vincent didn't approve of her lifestyle or how she chose to raise her children. But police say that night is where everything took a turn. The 3 family members were drinking, hanging out with Haleigh's children, and watching TV. Innocent enough, right? That is until Haleigh reportedly overheard her friend and Vincent talking about her. Upset by whatever was said, police say she stormed out of the home, even leaving behind her shoes. So her friend had to pick Haleigh up. She returned back to her mom's home, but the fighting between Haleigh and Vincent only continued. They argued, and that was broken up by their mom. They kept on going to the point Vincent told Haleigh to leave. According to police, he led her to the front door, pushed her onto the porch, and locked the deadbolt. Haleigh then banged on the door, trying to get back inside, and that's when the door suddenly swung open and Haleigh was in the doorway. But she was met with a bullet to her face, allegedly by Vincent. She fell down. And mind you, Haleigh's children and her mom were all there in the house when this happened. Haleigh's mom got the children, took them to the back of the home, and then 2 more bullets were fired. At some point after, Vincent called 911 and told his mom, "Give me a hug because I'm going to jail." And that's where he went, now charged with second-degree murder. Prosecutors reportedly wanted Vincent Hackett to be held on $1 million cash-only bond, but the judge went for a lower bond amount, still in the 6 figures, but for $250,000 instead. Just a horrific case out of Wyoming. I'm joined now by criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Florina Altschuler. Florina, thank you so much for being here today. Florina, this case is kind of hard to wrap your head around, really. Like, Vincent Hackett allegedly shot his half-sister after an argument in the head. What's your reaction to this case, and have you seen anything like it before?
I have not seen anything like this before. This really is just shocking and horrible for a brother to kill his own sister over disagreeing with her lifestyle. It is really egregious, really surprising, and I cannot understand how he could have gotten to a mental state to think to do this.
And speaking of that, not approving of his sister's lifestyle or how she raised her children, is that something that you think his defense attorney will use if this case actually goes to trial?
I mean, the defense attorney can try to use that, but I don't see how that in any way amounts to a defense. Potential defenses include self-defense, where the victim would have had to been in the act of being aggressive and actively attacking him, which from the facts is not the case here, or an extreme emotional state where the person is enraged from a real shocking and sudden event and acted in that moment. And that's not a complete defense, but that would reduce it. And this does not sound like that either. Cases where these extreme emotional defenses come in are a spouse walks in on another spouse, cheating on them, and they're just in shock from that moment. Again, not a defense to murder, but can downgrade it in some states to manslaughter. Here, this is a lifestyle that she was living. This is not a sudden and shocking event, nor really is there anything extreme about it. So I don't see what the defense here will be. The defense here is get a plea deal.
Yeah, and obviously, as a former prosecutor and now criminal defense attorney, you obviously see both sides. In your opinion, does it help or hurt his case, Vincent's case, that he had called 911 to admit to the shooting instead of just running or fleeing from the scene?
Well, obviously, it hurts him in that it's pretty clear he's the person who did this. But where it helps him is for purposes of mitigation for sentencing. It sounds like he's accepted responsibility and admitted that he did this. If he expresses remorse, which is a question to be answered, right? It doesn't necessarily sound that he even feels bad about what he did. He's just accepting responsibility and says, yes, I did this, but here's why. If he can acknowledge and accept remorse, that could potentially, for purposes of sentencing, mitigate his sentence to get him less years. Not significantly less, but it could shave some years off of his sentence.
Yeah, and whether, it's shooting or stabbing or strangling, just murdering your sister in general for seemingly no reason except being possibly irritated or mad for what she was doing with her life, it's not an excuse at all for this horrendous, horrible murder. But in your opinion, do you think that the defense can try and play it as a not guilty by reason of insanity?
I don't see how insanity is going to apply here. Insanity is a really narrow standard. And in order to be able to establish not guilty by reason of insanity, they have to establish that in the moment when he was acting, he did not know the difference between right and wrong and did not appreciate the nature of his actions. Him calling 911, him accepting responsibility, him stating what he did and why he did it is evidence against the insanity defense. This sounds like a case where he knew what he was doing and did it intentionally with purpose and understood that what he was doing was wrong. He just didn't care. That's not insanity. That's a whole nother issue that is not a defense.
And I think adding onto that as well too is telling your mom, "Mom, I'm going to jail now. Give me a hug," after murdering your sister and shooting her in the head, allegedly. Just reading through what we know now, how much do you think that alcohol kind of played into the escalation of everything? Because again, shooting someone in the head or the face clearly sends a message that you want this person to die.
Yeah, plenty of people drink alcohol. Plenty of people get drunk and they don't shoot somebody in the face as a result of being drunk. So I don't see how him drinking is a defense either. I can see how him drinking maybe gave him the courage to do something like this. But the vast majority of society drinks alcohol and does not murder people. So I don't see how that can possibly be an excuse either.
And say, for instance, there's no plea deal or he denies the plea deal, and this case actually goes to trial. In your opinion, and obviously we hear from a lot of legal analysts, and you yourself saying no case is ever a slam dunk. But in this particular case, if this case were to go to trial, do you think that the prosecution has the slam dunk here?
This is as good a case as it gets. A 911 call is not going to get suppressed. It's not a police interrogation while he's in custody. It's a call he makes and a statement he makes. So that's going to come into evidence. They arrest him at the house, at the scene, and he makes more admissions. All of that's going to come in. I don't see how he could possibly argue there's reasonable doubt and he's not the person who did it in light of that evidence. I also don't see how he could possibly argue self defense when he shot her in the head and in the face, and there's no evidence that she attacked him. So, really, the only defenses in a murder are either that it's self defense, so I did it, but I was justified in doing it. I don't see how that applies here. Or they got the wrong person. It's not me. There's reasonable doubt about who did this. And I don't see how that applies here. So he needs to accept responsibility, and his lawyer needs to negotiate as best a plea as possible so that he could maybe shave some years off of the prison sentence that he, and I don't say this lightly, but he's going to get. It is rare that I say that a case is a slam dunk case. In light of the evidence that we know here in this case, I don't see an acquittal.
Yeah, it'll be kind of hard to kind of, dismantle or kind of like, I guess, go with the defense that, this wasn't him, this was somebody else. Florina, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, though, where do you think everything goes from here?
I think this is one of those cases where the attorneys are going to negotiate a plea in short order and it's going to resolve and we really won't hear about it. But I could be wrong, and really he's in the driver's seat of this one, and if he doesn't want to take a plea, he's got a right to a trial. It's sure to convict him, but he does have that right, and he's free to exercise that right.
All right, I guess we'll see how everything goes from here. Again, Florina, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me.
Vincent Hackett remains in jail on a $750,000 cash bond. He has a preliminary hearing that's set for Thursday, January 30th. No plea has been entered yet, but if Vincent Hackett is convicted, he's facing 20 years to life in prison. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.